Why did silence feel heavier than shouting? The base had grown quiet after sunset, that strange quiet only military camps knew, not peace, but the pause between storms. Gravel paths shimmered under floodlights, cicadas hummed in the Carolina humidity, and somewhere in the distance, a generator thudded like a tired heartbeat. Most candidates had retreated to bunks or benches, exhausted bodies pretending they weren't spiraling in their heads about the day's failure. But she didn't retreat. Retreat was for when battles ended. And her battle never quite did. Anna sat on an overturned ammo crate at the edge of the training compound, elbows on her knees, fingers loosely laced, staring out at the dark shape of the urban maze where everything changed. Her jaw still ached faintly from where her head hit the wall, a bruise forming not from weakness, but from something uglier, someone else's fragility masquerading as dominance. Funny how the smallest impact could shake a system harder than explosions. Sweat pasted her shirt to her back despite the cooling night, and dirt still clung under her nails from climbing conduit and ceiling joists. She could have showered, could have eaten, could have joined the silent cluster of candidates cleaning weapons nearby. But solitude had always been her armor. Out here, the wind moved around her shoulders like a whisper, the moon hanging in a perfect half-arc above pine silhouettes. It almost felt sacred. It almost felt earned. Almost. The day replayed again, not the success, not the moment she dropped silently from a ceiling tile like some phantom born from dust and training scars, but the moment before, the shove, the head hitting concrete, the brief second of stillness afterward where she breathed and tasted copper and old memories. Some men raised fists because they feared weakness. Some raised them because they feared women weren't allowed to be stronger. And some, like Miller, raised them because the thought of being outthought was more humiliating than being outrun. Her fingers flexed unconsciously, remembering the heat in his eyes, rage mistaken for leadership, force mistaken for capability. That'll break him more than any Article 15, she murmured to herself, not with satisfaction but resignation. The military didn't break on gunfire, it broke in ego cracks, in arrogance mistaken for grit. Her throat tightened, not from pride but from something quieter, a familiar ache. It never got easier watching careers crumble, even when they deserved the fall. The world didn't need fewer warriors, it needed better ones. But this wasn't really about him. People like Miller came and went. The real battles were internal, always had been. Boots scuffed near her, crunching gravel. Someone approached without speaking. She knew the rhythm, slow, respectful gait, not the swagger of someone looking to poke a legend. She didn't turn right away. She gave space. Let them choose whether to stay or leave. Tanaka stopped at her side, silent. For a long time, neither spoke. A night breeze carried pine sap and damp earth. Moths danced around a distant lamppost like sparks clinging to life. "You eat yet?" Tanaka finally asked, voice low. No rank, no challenge, just a question that sounded suspiciously like concern. No. She didn't look up, didn't need to. His presence wasn't a threat. It was acknowledgement and apology. "You should," he murmured. "Long day." Understatement. She finally turned her head slightly. His eyes didn't hold pity or awe. They held understanding, the quiet kind earned, not given. He placed an MRE beside her, water bottle resting on top like a weighted promise. "You don't need it," he said, "but respect's still respect." She nodded once, enough. He left without waiting for more. Silence again, but softer now, not isolation, space. Her shoulders unwound a fraction. Back inside the barracks, muffled voices carried through open windows. She really cleared it alone. "No way, that's not human." "Bro," the general knew her, "did you see that? That guy's career is dead." Damn, imagine being him, pissing off a ghost operator. Her mouth twitched. She didn't want admiration, didn't crave fear. What she wanted was possibility. A military that judged on precision, not posturing. Strategy, not swagger. A culture where quiet didn't mean weak. where someone could be effective without needing to growl. She took a breath, slow, controlled, exactly like she had when the wall kissed her skull and she felt something ancient inside her uncoil. She hadn't been angry. Anger clouded decisions. What came over her was older than anger, discipline sharpened into instinct, honed across continents and forgotten corners of conflict zones. A switch. Cold, clinical, necessary. People built armor in different ways. Some built muscle, some built noise. She built silence. Her thoughts drifted. Afghanistan. Early years in special operations advisory programs. Night patrols in mountain villages where breathing wrong could expose you. Times she had been underestimated because she smiled softly, because she listened instead of boasting, because she weighed risk instead of charging headlong. Every time someone like Miller appeared, it wasn't just personal, it was history returning, ugly and stubborn. But today, the ending was different. Today, leadership intervened. Quiet strength didn't suffer in shadows, it was recognized, defended. That mattered more than the victory in the maze. Sometimes you didn't fight to prove you could win. Sometimes you fought to show others what winning should look like. She reached back, fingers brushing the faint sore spot on her skull. Could have been worse. She'd taken worse. Headbutts, kicks, weapons, entire nations collapsing around her boots. This was just a bruise. Bruises healed. Systems changed slower. The floodlights flickered, insects thrumming louder. Somewhere, boots sprinted, late detail maybe. Far trucks hummed on highways. The world kept moving like nothing monumental happened today. That was war, though. Even training had that lesson woven into it. The world does not pause for your pain or your triumph. Balance came in accepting that. Her chest rose gently, fell, a beat at peace, but her mind did not rest, because there was something she hadn't told anyone here. Not Master Sergeant Cole, not Tanaka, not even Thorne. This wasn't her hardest assignment. It wasn't even in the top 10. Her hardest missions had always been the ones where she couldn't fire, couldn't strike, couldn't physically change the outcome, where she had to sit across polished tables and assess whether the future of entire regions balanced on a shaky handshake or a whispered lie. Violence was easy compared to politics, compared to bureaucracy, compared to culture. And evaluating this program, these soldiers, this pipeline, it wasn't about tactics or skill. It was about resilience, humility, the ability to adapt under pressure, the capacity to see past ego. She had seen fractures today, but she had also seen potential in the quiet ones, the thinkers, the ones who followed orders but still questioned silently, the ones who didn't cheer when Miller fell. They were her reason for being here, not the conflict. Duty wasn't a weapon, duty was a mirror. And today it reflected truth in painful clarity. A mosquito buzzed near her ear. She waved it away lazily. For a moment she allowed herself something rare, softness. She wasn't invincible, she wasn't untouchable. She was tired, bone tired, tired of proving, tired of hiding, tired of being myth instead of human. But the world didn't make room for tired legends. It asked more, always more. A faint ache pulled at her collarbone, old injury flaring in humid air. Kandahar, rooftop, night raid gone sideways. Still there were scars deeper than skin, trust broken, friends buried, promises unkept. Names she would never whisper, she inhaled, steadying the ghosts. There are worse things than being underestimated, she whispered to the dark, like being known. Leaves rustled in a passing breeze. A lone owl called. She imagined, for just a heartbeat, a life without uniforms. Would she feel lighter or lost? Probably both. But she wasn't done yet. Missions still called. Futures still needed shaping. And she didn't bleed for flags, she bled for people, for the quiet ones, the overlooked ones, the ones who served without applause. Footsteps again, brisk this time. A young ranger candidate slowed hesitantly as he passed her. He swallowed, face flushed with nerves. "Ma'am." "Yes." Quiet, not cold. He froze anyway. Just wanted to say, he exhaled shakily. That was inspiring. She studied him a second, earnest eyes, shoulders too tense, fear mixed with admiration. Then don't repeat his mistake, she said softly. Lead with thought, not ego. He nodded fast, almost bowed, and hurried away like he'd received orders from a mythic oracle. She sighed. She didn't want worship. She wanted thoughtfulness. But seeds start small. Respect wasn't born in shouts, it grew in silence. A hum of insects swelled. The compound lights buzzed, casting halos in humid air. Somewhere, a sergeant barked at someone for sloppy weapon cleaning. Routine. Order. The mundane world returned. She leaned back slightly, letting tension drip from her shoulders like rain off armor. The mission here had barely begun. There were still days ahead, still evaluations, still change to push quietly into reluctant corners. Being quiet wasn't weakness. Being underestimated wasn't defeat. Some battles weren't won in gunfire, they were won in patience. She closed her eyes briefly, letting tiredness brush her bones. A whisper in her mind echoed from training instructors long gone. Noise proves insecurity, silence proves readiness. She opened her eyes again, sharper now, focused, ready. Tomorrow they would expect a storm or a saint. She would be neither. She would simply be relentless. Because sometimes strength isn't loud. Sometimes resilience doesn't roar. Sometimes dignity doesn't shout. It just waits, watches, and when the moment comes, it acts. And the world remembers. Why did morning always come too early for those who carried unfinished battles in their bones? Reveille hadn't sounded yet. The world was still a breath before dawn, that fragile hour when darkness clung to the edges of light like it feared letting go. But Anna was already awake, not because she slept lightly, or because years in war zones had conditioned her to react to every shift in wind and silence, though that was true. She woke because discipline was muscle memory long past habit. Rest was a luxury. Readiness was life. Boots on the floor, quiet stretch, cold water splashed to the face. No mirror needed, she'd lived with her reflection long enough to know what looked back. Not hardened steel, not arrogance, but a tired, sharpened resolve. Outside, the world breath mist along the tree line. Pine sap and earth, damp gravel. A base not yet stirring except for a few restless souls pretending sleep erased failure. The mission house sat dark in the distance, concrete silhouette holding echoes of paint rounds, shouts, and humiliation. She tied her hair back with a small black band, neat, controlled, hands steady, movements precise, the tiny rituals of warriors and monks. A soft knock at her door interrupted the quiet. She didn't tense, the cadence was calm, respectful. Tanaka again. He stood there in the half-light, already in boots and undershirt, expression unreadable but eyes carrying a weight that wasn't pity, accountability. You're up. So are you. You didn't eat last night. You noticed. He gave a small shrug, hard not to. Silence stretched, not uncomfortable, just full. Soldiers didn't waste words when truth already hung in the air. You good after yesterday? He finally asked. A simple question, complex answer. I've been hurt worse, she said softly. Not what I meant. She paused, considered honesty. It was rarer and more dangerous than any classified op. It's not the hit that matters, she murmured. It's what it revealed. He nodded once. Deep understanding. Quiet anger aimed not at her, but at the culture that let arrogance take root like mold in corners no one wanted to clean. After a moment he held out a hand, not shaking, not awkward, offering a protein bar. No ceremony, just human decency. She took it, thank you. He left without more words. Respect didn't need witness. By sunrise, the base shifted from stillness to structure. Boot falls, barked orders, the metallic rattle of rifles cleared and reassembled with mechanical devotion. Sweat dampened uniforms before breakfast even opened. Candidates lined up outside the briefing hall. Some glanced her way, then quickly away. Not fear, reverence tinged with discomfort. People didn't know what to do with legends when they looked like quiet women tying boot laces with the same care as anyone else. Whispers carried like low radio static. That's her. The general came for her. She dismantled the OPFOR alone. No rank on her patch, she's nobody and everybody. Myth formed faster than truth. Always had, always would. She ignored it all, not through arrogance but survival. Attention was a currency she couldn't afford to spend. Fame was a liability. Myth was weight. She carried enough. Master Sergeant Cole's voice cut through the murmurs like steel through cloth. Listen up. Silence snapped into place. Even the wind paused. His gaze flicked toward her briefly, respect now, not doubt. He cleared his throat, uncomfortable with the new gravity of his tone. Yesterday's events are already being addressed. We move forward, quiet professionalism, discipline. If you're here to posture, transfer to infantry. If you're here to learn, pay attention. He didn't look at honor again, not out of avoidance but protocol. Power didn't need spotlight. Teams reassigned. Field evolution in 30. Expect unconventional entry work, adaptive strategy under pressure. She felt, rather than saw, the ripple of tension. Everyone thought they knew unconventional warfare until they met someone who defined it. A young ranger to her left fumbled a strap. Nervous. She leaned slightly toward him, voice barely above breath. Slow movements are faster than rushed ones. He blinked, startled, grateful, then steadied his hands. A tiny guidance, a seed planted. Leadership wasn't volume, it was presence. The approach to the maze this time felt different. Yesterday, soldiers walked with swagger. Today, they walked with intention. Humility hung in the air heavier than humidity. Bravo team paired with Alpha now, no separation. No egos, shared mission. She blended into their formation the way water blends into soil, unobtrusive, essential. No one dared assign her a role this time. She chose her spot without announcing it, mid-column, adaptable, watching angles like a chess player seeing 10 moves ahead. A few glanced, unsure if they should defer. She gave no orders. Silence was her command. The scenario brief echoed from speakers. Urban hostage extraction. Unknown obstacles, 2 entry routes, improvised defenses, weapons free within safety rules. Then a pause, long enough for hearts to tighten. Opposition force is elite cadre. You will adapt or you will fail. Cole's gaze passed over the group like a judge weighing fate. Remember, the enemy learns faster than you do, so think faster than them. Anna felt eyes drift toward her. She pretended not to notice. The burden of expectation, heavier than any ruck. They moved. Engineered silence. Boots on gravel. The taste of anticipation sharp as copper on the tongue. The maze loomed, empty windows like eyes waiting to judge the worthy. At the breach point, Tanaka leaned subtly toward her. Advice, he whispered. 3 months ago she might have stayed silent, but mentorship wasn't weakness, hoarding skill was. Don't choose between fast and smart, she murmured. Be both. Pressure doesn't create diamonds, it reveals who already learned to endure. He nodded, and if they underestimate us again. A ghost of a smile touched her lips, thin, bitter, amused at the futility of that fear. They won't, not twice. A sharp buzz signaled the start. The team surged not with brute aggression but synchronized precision. 2 branches split, one toward main entrance, one toward side access. She stayed fluid, packing with flank security but mentally mapping possible ambush pockets, angles of approach, likely fallback zones. The opposition erupted seconds in coordinated bursts from elevated positions. Real tacticians today. The candidates moved smoother than yesterday. No panic, only grit. Still sloppy edges. Still adrenaline stealing discipline from a few shoulders. She watched, letting them lead, letting them struggle, only stepping forward when necessary. A Marine hesitated under suppressive fire at a stairwell, fear tightening his jaw. She tapped his shoulder once, reassurance, not command. Count breaths, move on exhale. He blinked, then nodded, charging at the exact cadence she predicted. The burst missed him by inches. Breath as timing, breath as survival. A calm voice cut through gunfire, Tanaka, calling angles, stacking teams, adapting routes. Growth already visible. Good. But the OPFOR shifted fast. Better than expected. A trap being set 2 rooms ahead. She sensed it before she saw it, pattern recognition carved from 100 raids, dozens of near misses. She stepped beside Tanaka, voice low. They want you funneled left, flank right through utility corridor. He didn't question, he nodded once. That trust, quiet, earned, mattered more than orders. The team shifted, pivoted, avoided the kill box entirely. Surprise rippled through the defenders. She saw it in the slight hesitation of paint rounds. Contact bypassed, Bravo moving alternate. Someone shouted and energy surged. Confidence without arrogance, the balance war demanded but rarely awarded. Gunfire intensified deeper inside. Screams of simulated casualties, sweat, heartbeats pounding drum tight. And then a sudden choke of silence. Hostage room secured. Mission successful. Not by one ghost operator descending from ceilings, but by many small corrections, quiet guidance, and soldiers learning to think like hunters instead of hammers. When they exited, breath heavy but unbroken, Cole met them at the gate. A slow nod, approval disguised in gruff neutrality. That, he said, is a start. Heads lifted, shoulders straightened, pride, a healthy kind, settled across the formation. His gaze shifted to her briefly, acknowledgement without spectacle. That was all she wanted. As the group dispersed to hydrate and reset gear, a young recruit approached her, nervous but determined. "Ma'am, why didn't you take point? You could have done it faster." She studied him, soft face, sharp eyes, hungry to understand, not to praise. "Leadership isn't doing the mission for them," she said gently. "It's helping them discover they can do it themselves." He swallowed, processing the weight behind those simple words. "So you're teaching us?" Her gaze drifted toward the maze, where sweat still glistened on concrete like ghosts of battles past. "I'm testing you," she corrected softly. "Teaching happens afterward. Testing reveals truth." He nodded slowly, something new forming in his expression, humility mixed with hope. "Thank you," he whispered. She didn't answer. The lesson wasn't finished. Not yet. Because the hardest part wasn't winning missions. The hardest part was reshaping warriors to understand that strength wasn't proven in domination, but in restraint, in patience, in precision, in knowing when silence carried more authority than shouting ever could. Sometimes the battlefield wasn't a building. Sometimes it was a culture. And those battles required a different kind of courage, the kind that didn't scream. It simply endured, guided, stayed steady until others rose too. Tomorrow would be harder. Culture always pushed back before it yielded. But she would be ready. She always had been. Sometimes the strongest thing a soldier can do is let others learn they are capable too. Sometimes the greatest warriors lead quietly, and the world changes in whispers first. Why did the moments right before a storm always feel calmer than peace? Dawn had hardened into morning, sunlight cutting sharp lines through training yard dust, sweat already gathering under collars before the first briefing ended. Today wouldn't be about gunfire or breaching or room clearing. That much was obvious from the instructors, clipped tones, and the tightness in their posture. Psych pressure day. Decision-making under fatigue, interrogation drills, forced ethical dilemmas masked as scenario evaluation. The kind of test where bullets couldn't help you and charm wouldn't save you, where silence wasn't a refuge, it was a spotlight. Some candidates dreaded live fire. Anna had always found the psychological gauntlets more revealing. Fear of pain was simple, fear of truth that was harder to hide. She sat on the end of a wooden bench outside the assessment building, forearms resting on combat pants, breathing steady. She wasn't nervous. She didn't get nervous for this kind of thing. But she did feel something. A knot below her sternum, not fear, not dread. Anticipation. A test wasn't a threat. A test was information. Tanaka paced a short distance away, jaw tight. The ranger from yesterday rolled his shoulders, muttering a quiet prayer. Others tried to stretch, though their muscles didn't need stretching, it was their minds fraying. She saw doubt creep in where bravado once lived. Good doubt was fertile ground. Certainty bred ignorance. A drill sergeant stepped out, clipboard in hand, sunglasses reflecting a world already in judgment. Candidates inside, phones off, egos off, listened sharp. The group rose not in perfect sync, but without the sloppy swagger of earlier days. Growth was rarely dramatic. It showed up in posture, in humbled eyes, in quieter exhalations before stepping forward. Anna followed last, only because she always preferred to watch the flow of movement, who rushed, who hesitated, who looked for reassurance, who looked to dominate. Patterns told stories. Inside, fluorescent lights buzzed like restless insects. The air smelled of old carpet, cold coffee, and thousands of nervous soldiers who'd sat here before questioning their worth. Rows of desks, whiteboards filled with cryptic notes, and at the front, two instructors, one a stone-faced woman with pararescue wings, the other a psychologist in uniform who looked like he carried secrets behind every calm blink. They didn't introduce themselves. Authority didn't require names here. You will receive isolated ethical scenarios, the woman began, tone clipped like a scalpel, followed by interrogation resistance drills. A ripple of discomfort moved through the room. Ethical scenario testing was infamous, designed to expose cracks in values, pressure responses, force soul-level decisions. You will make choices under monitored stress, she continued. No right answers, only true ones. Then her gaze paused on Anna. Not long, not dramatic, but enough. A silent acknowledgement, we know who you are, and you're still not beyond evaluation. Good, she wouldn't have come if she was. Begin, the psychologist said simply. Files dropped on desks, timers ready, doors locked. Anna opened hers, a hypothetical mission, hostage rescue, shadow intel, civilian risk, team morale at odds with command, a teammate compromising objective integrity. The kind of problem no training manual solved because manuals didn't bleed and cry and choose. She read quietly, pen poised, no tremor in her hand. She knew how to parse chaos because chaos had once been her daily language. Her mind moved like a river, smooth on the surface, powerful underneath. Trade-off decisions, chain of command integrity, moral weight measured against operational necessity. The cold mathematics of harm weighed against the sanctity of life. The silent truth every special operator lived with. Saving lives meant sometimes choosing who died. She didn't rush. She didn't hesitate. Decisions weren't guesses, they were commitments. When she wrote, her words weren't emotional, but they held moral gravity. Mission success without moral integrity is just violence wearing a uniform. Time ticked down. Pens scratched paper. Breathing thickened. One candidate kept wiping sweat from his temple. Another stared blank for too long, frozen between what felt right and what felt acceptable. Anna finished, folded her paper, and sat back. She didn't look around. To observe in a test like this was a tell, a sign of uncertainty. She waited, still as steel cooled in shadow. When the timer beeped, heads jerked like prisoners hearing a cell door slam. Pages collected. Then came the second phase. Interrogation resistance, the instructor said. Rotations, No physical contact, psychological pressure only. A Marine across the room stiffened, PTSD flickering behind his eyes. She noticed. So did the psychologist. He made a tiny mark on his sheet. Observation, not judgment. They called names. Candidates entered side rooms one by one. Muffled voices rose, commands sharp, questions cutting, doubt manufactured like bullets on a conveyor belt. Anna waited, folded hands, calm breath. Tanaka went in. 30 minutes later, he returned wearing a face like someone who'd run through emotional barbed wire. Sweat on his brow, but eyes clearer, as if something painful had burned away illusion. Her turn. The room was small, 2 chairs, metal table, camera perched like a watching crow. The interrogator leaned back with a lazy posture that wasn't lazy at all, predator relaxation. Eyes sharp enough to skin someone's composure without raising his voice. He didn't start with questions. He started with silence. Smart. Most broke under silence faster than shouting. They filled it with doubt, explanation, justification. Silence forced reflection, and reflection was where weakness exposed itself. She just breathed. He studied her, seeing not the uniform but the weight she carried. Finally, he spoke, tone deceptively soft. You think you're better than them. No. You act like you don't need anyone. I need people, she said calmly. I just don't need validation. He almost smirked, a good answer. He tried another angle. You intervened yesterday only when forced. Why wait for harm before acting? She met his eyes. Her voice held no apology, no defensiveness. People don't learn if you shield them from their own decisions. And if someone gets hurt. They did, and the system corrected. He circled. You let egoistic behavior manifest to expose it. I let reality do what it does. I just refuse to rescue arrogance. He leaned forward, elbows on table. That makes you dangerous. That makes me honest. He studied her, long, searching, trying to find a thread to pull. Most people cracked not from pressure, but from introspection forced too fast. He tried the oldest trick, doubt. You think you hide your past well, but myths leak. Legends bleed truth. Why stay here pretending to be a trainee when you could be commanding the ones training you? Her breath stilled, soft, invisible. Command and influence are different, she said quietly. One demands obedience, the other earns it. And which do you prefer? Whichever improves the people beside me. He hesitated, not defeated, intrigued. She unsettled him by not fighting, by not defending, by simply being. Last question, he said finally. What scares you? She paused, not calculation, not hesitation, consideration. Not of him, but of truth. Waste, she said softly. Wasting potential, wasting people, wasting lessons because pride spoke louder than logic. A silence like captured breath filled the room. He wrote nothing. He didn't need to. Some answers lived too clearly to record. Session complete. She stood smoothly, nodding once. Respect between warriors, not adversaries. Outside again, sunlight had shifted, harsher now, unforgiving but honest. Candidates emerged one by one, some shaken, some relieved, all changed. Reflection had scraped sediment off pride, leaving raw edges and new clarity. Tanaka approached her like one does a slow-burning fire, cautious respect. How'd you do? He asked. I wasn't the one being tested. He frowned slightly. We all were. She looked at the building, at the people stepping out half-stripped of ego. No, she murmured. The institution is being tested through us. We are the mirror. They're deciding if they like the reflection. He exhaled slowly, understanding settling like dust in sunlight. Is that why you're really here? She didn't answer directly. Instead, sometimes systems don't fail. They just forget who they were built to serve. And who is that? The quiet ones, she said. The ones who don't shout their worth. A breeze moved through, lifting the edges of loose paper on tables nearby. Another candidate passed, pausing, voice shaking just slightly. "Ma'am, thank you for yesterday and today." She nodded, her expression unchanging, but her gaze softened a fraction. "Earn your humility, that's all." They walked away, not with swagger but with something rarer, direction. She sat again at the bench, sunlight warming her shoulders, heart steady, mind already turning toward tomorrow. Strength wasn't in pushing others down. Strength was in making space for others to rise. Some wars weren't won with rifles. Some were won one mindset at a time. Sometimes the battlefield was inside people. And sometimes the victory was simply watching someone become better than the day before. Quiet revolutions changed everything because the loud ones burned out. Our mission continued. Not to conquer, to transform, to remind a warrior culture that the deadliest blade was never the loudest. It was the one sharpened in silence and used with restraint. Why does trust build slowly but break in a single breath? The sun was unforgiving by mid-afternoon, beating down on camouflage and skin with equal indifference. The training field shimmered with heat waves rising from gravel like ghosts lifting from earth. Sweat gathered under armor plates, trickled down temples, pooled at the base of spines beneath heavy rucks. But today wasn't about endurance, not only that anyway. Today was about trust under tension, and the instructors wasted no time making that clear. "Buddy, rescue lanes," a cadre barked, voice cracking across formation like a whip. "You don't pick your partner, we pick. You rise or you fail together." Unspoken truth, some would drag strength up from weakness. Others would collapse under someone else's weight. Anna stood at ease, gaze forward as assignments were called. She already knew what would happen. They would pair her with someone struggling, not as punishment but as test. Could she elevate without overshadowing, guide without commanding? A good operative could clear rooms. A great operative could heal dysfunction. "Sharma," the instructor called. A pause in the air, a beat where even the wind seemed to glance sideways. "You're with Price." Murmurs rolled through the group like distant thunder. Price, young, eager but raw, brilliant on paper, brilliant in theory until bullets, or even rubber ones, sang near his helmet. Fear clung to him like static. Yesterday he froze when doors slammed. Today he carried doubt like a ruck twice his weight. Anna nodded once, stepping toward him. He swallowed hard. "Ma'am, I mean candidate I." His voice cracked like a green branch under pressure. "You're here," she said quietly. "That's enough to begin." Not a pep talk, not a shield, just truth. His breathing steadied barely but steadied. Nearby, one candidate whispered under breath, pity disguised as cynicism. "She'll drag him or he'll drown her." Anna pretended not to hear, but Price did. Jaw tightened, shame flicker, and somewhere in his gaze a tiny match struck. Humiliation could break or ignite, time would decide. The cadre lifted a signal flag. Scenario brief echoed across the field. Simulated battlefield, casualty under fire, drag, shield, treat, exfil. Smoke pots hissed to life, bathing the compound in white fog like a battlefield waking from a nightmare. Gunfire simulators snapped sharp cracks. The smell of cordite ghosts drifted. Lane 1 Geo. They moved, not sprinting, not charging, but moving with measured urgency. Control over speed. Breath matching footfalls. Price flinched at the first pop of blank fire. Instinct tried to pull him small, inward. "Eyes up," Anna whispered. "Courage isn't absence of fear, it's movement in spite of it." He inhaled shakily, but lifted his gaze. That mattered more than flawless technique. The casualty lay between cinderblock cover and open gravel, mannequin dressed like a downed teammate, red-stained bandage taped to chest, leg rotated awkwardly. Price hesitated, looking at open ground like it was ocean, and he didn't know how to swim. Anna knelt beside him, 2 breaths in, out. He obeyed, not because she commanded, but because he trusted. Then movement. Together they sprinted. Smoke curled around their shins. Rounds cracked harmlessly overhead from instructors simulating chaos. Price reached the dummy, arms under shoulders, dragging backward. Too fast, too exposed. His panic outpaced technique and almost pulled him sideways. Anna placed one hand on his back, not restraining, anchoring. Slow as smooth. Smooth as fast, he breathed. He recalibrated mid-motion. Muscles remembered what fear had interrupted. Drag improved. Breath found rhythm. Halfway back, he stumbled on loose gravel. The dummy's boot caught, jerking him. His knee hit ground hard. He froze again. Not physically, mentally. She dropped beside him. Look at me. His eyes lifted, frantic, young, drowning. Do not shame yourself for struggling, she murmured. Shame only comes when you quit. His throat bobbed, he nodded, then gripped again. They moved, together this time. Two bodies hauling, one with purpose instead of panic. Sweat stung eyes, lungs burned, time bled forward. When they reached cover, Price collapsed, gasping, trembling, but alive with something new beneath the fatigue, self-respect. Anna checked the chalk mark on the dummy's chest. Price fumbled his tourniquet, hands shaking. But this time he didn't stall. He forced motion through tremor. Failed cadence, correction, retry. Progress wasn't beautiful, it was raw and real. Once stabilized, they loaded the dummy on a sled for exfil. Price staggered but didn't break stride. Determination outpacing fragility now. He didn't look heroic. He looked human, and that was harder, more honest. Mission complete signal sounded. Price stood hunched, breathing like every inhale cost a memory. He didn't cheer, didn't gloat, just wiped sweat and blinked hard, fighting tears. He turned to her, voice cracking. I thought I'd fail again. You did fail, she said softly, and then you didn't stop. That's the part that matters. His gaze wavered, emotions sharp as edges. Why didn't you take over? You could have. Because you were capable, she replied, but you didn't know it yet. His shoulders shook once, relief almost collapsing him. He didn't salute, didn't thank her. Just breathed the deepest breath of his life, like someone tasting belief for the first time. Not every lane went that way. To the right, two candidates argued mid-drag. Blame hissed like live wire. One stormed off after simulation ended, ego bleeding louder than pride. Across the field, another broke, sitting in dirt, mask of shame he couldn't lift. Instructors watched, not to judge pain, but to judge response. Growth wasn't linear. Evolution was messy. Anna cleaned her gloves. Calm hands, steady breath. She did not bask in success because leadership wasn't a performance. It was responsibility. Tanaka approached, sweat rolling down temples but eyes steady. He did good. He did, she agreed. And you didn't make it about you. It was never about me. He looked at her for a long moment, searching. Does it ever get easier, carrying others like that? She considered. The field crackled with end-of-drill energy, gasps, quiet curses, relief. A medic wiped a trainee's scraped elbow. A sergeant fixed a sling. Smoke thinned, revealing hard earth and harder truths. It gets heavier, she said finally, but your back learns to hold weight. He nodded slowly, not in agreement, in understanding. That's what scares people about you, he murmured. Not your skill, your patience. She didn't smile, but something softened around her eyes. The loudest soldiers crave being seen. The strongest can endure being invisible. He shook his head with a quiet exhale, impressed, bewildered. You make it sound lonely. It is. Worth it. She looked at Price across the field, shoulders finally square, chin lifted as he cleaned gear with new quiet pride. A small victory, invisible to most. Monumental to one. Yes, she whispered, always. Later, after chow, after debrief, after muscles relaxed but fatigue still hummed low in sinew and bone, She sat again at her usual spot, the edge of the yard, solitary bench, cooling air brushing her skin. Price walked by slower this time, like someone who didn't want to intrude but also didn't want to pass silently. He paused, awkward. "Ma'am." She didn't correct him today. "Yes. I don't know how to say thank you that doesn't sound." He searched for words through a fog of pride and humility. "You don't need to say it," she murmured. He hesitated. "Then how do I repay it?" She looked out across the compound, where dusk-painted shapes of soldiers sitting in quiet clusters. No swagger left, only work and reflection. Do for someone else one day what was done for you. He swallowed, nodded, then walked with steadier steps. Alone again, she felt the ache deep behind her ribs that came not from exertion, but from recognition. Power didn't corrupt when quiet. Quiet power rebuilt. She leaned back, arms resting loosely, eyes drifting upward. Purple dusk, whisper of breeze, a single star-piercing sky before full night claimed the field. Some days shaped legends, others shaped humans. This day shaped a future leader out of a frightened soldier. That mattered more than myth. Sometimes the battlefield wasn't proving you were the best. Sometimes it was proving someone else could be more than they believed. Sometimes strength wasn't lifting weight, it was lifting people. And dignity. It didn't roar. It sat quietly on a bench at dusk, breathing calm into a world still learning what true power looked like. Why is it that the battlefield inside a person is always the last one anyone notices? Night had taken the training grounds again, but not like yesterday's soft quiet. This night felt different, anticipatory, heavy, but in the way clouds hang just before they break open. Humidity clung to skin, thick enough to taste. Pine needles whispered overhead. Far-off artillery practice thudded through the stillness like a heartbeat beneath earth. Anna sat on a low step behind the advanced training barracks, sharpening a field knife out of habit more than need. One slow stroke at a time, steel kissing stone, rhythm steady like controlled breath. She didn't carry the knife here to fight. She carried it to remember. Every soldier had rituals, hers carved away thought like whetstone to blade. She wasn't supposed to think about earlier, but her mind replayed it anyway. Price's face when he stood up straighter. The moment a recruit learned they were not defined by their panic but by their recovery, that mattered. Not medals, not secret commendations, not legends whispered at bases across oceans. Growth, that was the battlefield, that was the mission. Still something gnawed at her tonight. A whisper beneath bone, not doubt, not fear, something older. A memory. A tent lit by lantern glow in a valley half the world away. The smell of dust, cordite, and blood. Voices raised, not in anger, in desperation. A teammate breaking under pressure. A call she made that saved civilians but cost a friend's loyalty. The day she learned every win still held a wound inside it. She paused her knife, fingers still, eyes fixed not on the steel but the memory flickering behind it. Price found strength today, but real strength wasn't tested yet. Strength never revealed itself in simulated battlefield lanes. Strength showed when the stakes weren't padded by instructors and training safeties, when hearts split between mission and humanity. And she knew deeply, painfully. The candidates here didn't yet understand that war sometimes replaced bullets with decisions that haunted more than shrapnel ever could. Footsteps approached, measured, quiet, a presence before it spoke. Couldn't sleep either, huh? Tanaka eased down beside her without asking permission, a sign he now knew where the edges of her solitude lived. She didn't push him away. She didn't invite, either. They existed comfortably in the middle, rare space between strangers and soldiers bound by silent respect. She didn't answer at first. Silence wasn't cold here, it was truth. "They briefed us on tomorrow," he said after a moment. "Night infiltration, civilian presence simulation, decision faults included." She nodded, still sharpening. They'll test restraint and urgency. Those usually bleed into each other. He chuckled softly. You say that like you're looking forward to it. I am. Why, you already passed years ago. She stopped the knife mid-stroke, tilted her gaze toward him, steady, not hard. You don't practice for when you're strong, she murmured. You practice for when you're tired, when you're doubtful, when the part of you that knows better fights the part of you that wants to break. He leaned back on his elbows, staring at the stars. You talk like you've had to hold worlds in your hands. She resumed, sharpening slowly. Worlds, no, a breath, lives. A beat, wind rustled leaves like whispered confessions. Tanaka looked down. You think we're ready. You're becoming ready. And Price. She paused, considering. He learns pain the way some learn languages, fast, deep, quietly. You admire him. I recognize him. He didn't ask what that meant, smart man. After a moment he stood, brushing dust off fatigues. Get some rest, big day. She didn't reply. Rest wasn't something she took. It was something she accepted when the world stopped needing her momentarily. When he left, the knife rhythm resumed, steel whispering against stone, breath steady but mind restless. She didn't worry about tomorrow's drills. She worried about who these young soldiers would become when drills turned into deployments, when decisions weren't scored by instructors but by history, when mistakes weren't chalk and simulation, but blood and consequence. Duty didn't scare her, regret did. Dawn cut the sky like a blade, pale light pulling shadows apart. Candidates gathered in full kit, NVGs mounted, weapons checked. This wasn't a noise day. It was a silent one, a ghost's day. The cadre stood before them, unreadable. Their voices barely above a whisper, like even sound could compromise the mission. Objective: extract intel without detection. Non-combatants in play. If you fire without threat confirmation, you fail. If you hesitate at unjustified risk, you fail. Balance is survival. Balance. Most operators excelled at aggression or restraint, few mastered both. Anna clipped her helmet strap, watched the group, saw faces tight with focus and just the tiniest tremor of anticipation. Fear too, but fear wasn't the enemy, panic was. And panic came from a mind racing faster than breath could handle. She spoke to no one, but inside she whispered to the ghost of every moment she'd walked into darkness, not knowing if she'd walk out. May clarity find them. May humility steady them. May arrogance stay silent. The exercise began. Movement through shadows. Gravel crunch muted under practiced footwork. Laser grids cast barely visible webs across alleys. Drones hummed overhead. This wasn't brute training. This was intellect, precision, patience. Tanaka led, Price near the rear, learning, not hiding. Anna positioned herself off-center, neither leading nor following. The ideal vantage was always just slightly removed. They approached a mock compound. Cardboard silhouettes shaped like civilians moved unpredictably, no patterns, no mercy for hesitation. Children's shapes among them, the cruel teaching tool of modern conflict. This wasn't combat. This was clarity under moral fire. A candidate ahead lifted his weapon too fast when a shadow darted near. A silhouette shaped like a teenage boy running across path. Anna's hand landed on his shoulder before instinct became mistake. No. Just breath, just control. He exhaled, shaking. I didn't think. You reacted, she whispered. Reaction kills when fear leads it, thought saves. Further in, a sudden commotion, OPFOR actors simulating panic and screams. Chaos designed to scramble judgment. Price froze, not fear this time, conflict. His weapon raised, lowered, raised again, whisper-type breath. He scanned. He almost fired. But then his jaw clenched and he holstered instead, grabbing a silhouette child and pulling it behind cover. Anna watched that. Pride didn't warm her, relief did. He was learning the hardest lesson. Not every threat deserves a bullet. Suddenly, a staged ambush. Paint rounds popped like angry rain. Someone cried out. A candidate went down. Price flinched but then acted. Pulled his teammate behind cover like he did the dummy yesterday, but faster, surer. And she felt it. That flicker she lived for, when a soldier realized they had crossed a threshold inside themselves. That was transformation, not muscle, not marksmanship. Character under chaos. They cleared the compound with 0 civilian casualties and minimal simulated injuries. When the end horn signaled success, the field didn't erupt in cheers. It exhaled. Quiet triumph beat louder than celebration. Cole approached, arms crossed, face neutral because respect in special operations didn't often come dressed in smiles. "Better," he said to the group. That one word meant more than applause. He looked at Anna a beat longer than professional neutrality allowed, then nodded, barely, enough. Later, candidates sat on ground eating in tired silence. Not camaraderie yet, but the beginning of it. Shared hardship births bonds stronger than words. Price approached again, not timid this time, steady. "Ma'am, today I saw myself hesitate. Yesterday I saw myself freeze. I'm trying not to be that man." "You are not frozen," she replied. "You are waking up." He swallowed. "Do you ever stop learning?" She looked out at the tree line, where wind whispered through needles like soft warnings. "No," she said. "War evolves, so must we." He nodded slowly, like each second carved a deeper truth into him. Then soft, "Thank you again." She didn't nod, didn't soften, didn't deflect. Instead, "You did that, I was only a mirror." His eyes watered, not from weakness, but recognition. He walked away taller. Tanaka came up beside her quietly. "You're building something here." "No," she said. "They're building themselves. I'm just keeping the ground steady." He studied her profile, calm, carved, resolute. "You ever wish someone steadied ground for you like that?" She paused, long enough he almost apologized for asking. "No," she said finally. "I wish I hadn't needed it." And that was the closest she ever came to confession. Night approached again, slow, soft, inevitable. And as the first stars appeared, Anna felt something shift in the compound like a tide turning. Not because they adored her. Not because they feared her. But because they were beginning to understand why she existed here at all. Not to be the sharpest blade, but to teach others how to sharpen themselves. Quiet revolutions didn't start with armies. They started with people learning painfully that strength could be gentle and power could be quiet. And dignity. It still didn't roar. It stood among recruits in the dusk, unseen and unwavering, steady as a mountain watching seeds become forests. Why do the hardest lessons arrive only after you think you've mastered the last one? The next morning barreled in without ceremony, not soft like yesterday's dawn, not hesitant. It arrived sharp, stern, as if the sun itself intended to test them. The sky was clear, brutally blue, the kind of daylight that exposes everything, mistakes, fear, and truth that training days could no longer hide. A thunder of boots hit gravel at formation. Today wasn't light. No warm-up laps, no instructor jokes, no half-smiles from soldiers growing familiar with humility. The cadre faced them like statues carved from combat deployments and sleepless tour. Master Sergeant Cole stepped forward, voice stripped of patience. "Welcome to Failure Day." A ripple of confusion traveled the ranks. "Your task today is not to win," he continued. "Your task is to fail and to keep moving." Someone sucked in a breath. Someone else stiffened. Price's jaw tightened, eyes flicking and locking straight. Anna didn't move, her stillness was its own beat of anticipation. Cole's voice cut sharper. "In the field, failure happens. Plans collapse, people freeze. You get hurt. You lose pieces of your soul. If you only train to succeed, you will die the moment reality stops cooperating. He looked at each candidate like he could see every fear they hadn't confessed. Today you will break, in small ways, in safe ways, so you learn how to keep fighting when your body, your pride, and your certainty have already quit. They didn't cheer. This wasn't a motivation speech. It was truth. Anna almost smiled, something faint, private. Failure days existed in her world long before training pipelines copied them. In her experience, the most dangerous operator wasn't the one who never failed. It was the one who failed, learned, and stood again without resentment. Resilience wasn't loud. It was quiet stubbornness in the face of pain. The failure course sprawled across a wooded ravine, rope bridges swaying over mud pits, cold creek water flowing fast enough to numb bones, barbed wire tunnels, weighted dummies to drag up slopes, and stations where instructors waited to disrupt, confuse, and pressure. It wasn't just physical, it was psychological. Timed obstacles, surprise team role swaps, radio comms disruption, false intel, ethical curveballs, and the unspoken rule hanging in the air like a guillotine. Every perfect decision would be punished. They stood at the start line. Cole's whistle sliced the air. Move! The pack surged, except Anna didn't sprint. Sprinting was desperation disguised as effort. She jogged, breathing slow, letting others burn adrenaline early. Price was ahead, too fast, shoulders tense. Tanaka matched a balanced pace, glancing back once, a silent check-in before focusing forward. Mud pits swallowed boots to calf level. Someone fell, cursed, dragged themselves out. Instructors shouted, not insults, truth disguised as pressure. You think war waits for your confidence? Move. Pain is not failure, stopping is. A rope climb after water immersion, palms slipping, muscles shaking from cold shock, candidates struggling to grip. Anna climbed without looking like she was climbing, efficiency in motion, every muscle working just enough, never wasted. Halfway up, the rope jerked, an instructor tugging unexpectedly. Designed failure. Someone fell. Groans, frustration, fear. Real fear, not fear of pain, but fear of humiliation. The most corrosive kind. Price froze near the top. Not physically, internally. She saw it in his shoulders, in the twitch at his jaw. That ancient instinct to not try because trying might reveal the truth you fear most, that you're not enough. She paused at the base, not calling up, not cheering, not commanding, just standing presence as anchor. That was enough. He moved again, strained, slipped, cursed, tried again, made it. Victory measured not in grace, but in refusal to quit. At a creek crossing, the cadre forced random partner switches. Tanaka was shuffled to another group. Price too. Anna ended up with a Marine corporal she barely recognized, young, bulky, breathing hard through nose. You leading or am I? He puffed, ego already looking for comfort. No leader, she said, shared decisions. He scoffed, the insecure always mistook equality for threat. They moved. The creek rushed to knee height, freezing, pulling ankles. The corporal stumbled. She steadied him with one hand, wordless. He bristled, embarrassed that help came from someone smaller, calmer. Halfway through, paint rounds cracked from tree-lined simulated ambush. The corporal panicked and sprinted ahead, abandoning her. She didn't chase. She tracked, planned. She followed with measured pace. At the exit, he crouched behind cover, panting. You should have run, he snapped. She looked at him, silent, calm. I don't leave teammates. He flushed red, humiliation, not understanding. We're not teammates, he muttered. Wrong answer. He didn't know yet that someday, in a real valley under real fire, he'd pray someone like her was watching his flank. Learning would come, pain first. Mid-course, they reached a casualty drag station. This time the dummy weighed as much as a real unconscious body, dead weight, soaked with water to add 20 invisible pounds. Price was paired with another candidate who immediately complained about his back, Price lifted anyway, strained, knees shook, voice shaking. "I've got you, just don't quit on me." Anna heard that, felt pride flicker in her ribs, brief, dangerous. Pride wasn't the goal, growth was. Then a staged crisis. The partner fainted. Instructors stepped in, deliberate pressure. Candidate down. Continue objective alone or render aid, choose. No correct answer, only consequence. Price froze again, but not like before, not fear, conflict. He looked at the dummy, then at the injured soldier. He sank to a knee, checked pulse, signaled for aid, lost time, lost points. But kept humanity. A quiet breath left Anna's chest. Relief. Not because he chose right, because he chose consciously. War punished hesitation, but it punished losing yourself more. 2 hours in, fatigue set in everywhere. Legs trembled, minds frayed. Even instructors grew sharp-voiced, knowing breaking points approached. When Anna reached a blind corner event, simulated smoke, crying audio gunshots, she didn't rush. She waited 1 second, listened, mapped sound, processed. Then moved like water through the chaos. Someone bumped into her, panicked. She guided them by shoulder instead of shoving. The corporal from earlier stumbled near, coughing, eyes wild. She steadied him again, gently, firmly. He didn't speak, but shame wasn't in his eyes now. Gratitude was trying to break through. Cracks form before change grows. By the time they reached the final hill, steep dirt incline, ropes hanging like lifelines, most bodies moved from instinct, not strength. Price was ahead, crawling, slipping, crawling again. A candidate near him sobbed into the dirt, face streaked with mud and despair. Anna reached the base, looked up. The hill loomed like time itself, indifferent and enormous. She began climbing, controlled, every pull efficient, every muscle contributing, a mountain moving without noise. Halfway the corporal lost grip, slid 6 feet, ragdoll tired. He didn't curse this time, didn't pound the earth. He just breathed ragged, trying again. When she reached the top, she didn't cross the timing string. She turned. Watched. Price was nearly there, legs shaking so violently he could barely dig toes in. He made eye contact with her, a silent plea, not for help but for witnessing. That mattered more than rescue. She stood still. The weight of her gaze didn't push, it steadied, and that was enough. He screamed into the dirt, not anger, not pride, effort raw and human, and he made it, collapsed across the line. Not triumphant. Transformed. The corporal reached top last, chest heaving, shame nowhere now, only exhaustion humbled into gratitude. He didn't say thank you, he nodded once, chin trembling. That was enough. Cole blew the whistle, training complete. Silence hung thick, then voice soft. You all failed at something today. He paused, letting the truth sit. And you kept going, that's why you're still here. Eyes lifted, some tears, not weakness, release. He looked at Anna briefly. Even legends fail, that's how myths stay human. Later, alone at dusk, Anna sat again on that same bench. Dirt smeared across her forearms, sweat dried in salt on her collar, breath slow, body tired but mind sharper. Tanaka found her, quiet step, sat beside her again. You let yourself struggle today, he said. She didn't deny it. Why, he asked softly, you could have made it look easy. She watched fireflies spark in the tree line, fragile lights in a vast dark. Because they don't need to see perfect, she murmured. They need to see possible. He breathed out slow, respectful. And you, what do you need? Her answer came low, honest, rare. To know that helping them rise doesn't mean losing who I am. He nodded, not understanding fully, but understanding enough. Across the field, Price sat alone, staring at his own hands like they contained a map of who he could become. Not fearful, not defeated, just learning to believe again. The kind of belief you don't shout. The kind you earn. Anna leaned back, breath steady. muscles aching, heart steady but heavy in a good way. The weight that comes after purpose is lived, not talked about. Maybe tomorrow they'd break again. Maybe tomorrow someone else would rise. The cycle didn't scare her, it sustained her. Because sometimes the mission wasn't killing enemies or saving countries. Sometimes the mission was simple. Teach someone that failure is not the end of a warrior. It's the birthplace of one. And dignity. It still didn't scream. It breathed. It endured. It stayed when others quit. Quiet, unshakable. A force stronger than violence. Why does calm always arrive right before life decides to test whether you truly earned it? 3 days passed without incident. Sun rose, boots hit gravel, sweat-soaked uniforms and dried again under desert wind. Candidates moved cleaner, quieter, sharper. They no longer trained like individuals, they flowed like currents in the same river. Something had shifted. Confidence didn't march loud, it settled quiet, like dust after a storm. Price no longer flinched before decisions. Tanaka no longer watched Anna like she carried secrets he feared. Even the corporal, the one who ran ahead and then fell behind, now walked with a softness in his posture, the humility that comes after pride cracks open and lets growth in. Anna noticed all of it. She didn't praise. She didn't encourage with words. Her approval lived in silence, in the simple act of continuing to show up and train with them, not above them. But there was something she hadn't told anyone. She wasn't here just to teach. She was here because she needed this place, needed the structure, the purpose, the mission without bullets, needed to feel she still had a future beyond the ghosts of her last deployment. No one here knew how close she had come to leaving the service entirely, not because she was weak, but because she was tired. Tired in the way only someone who has carried lives inside their decisions could understand. Tired in the way that doesn't show in muscle fatigue, but in the quiet of night when you close your eyes and instead of rest, memory arrives like a weight too old to name. This course wasn't just saving them. It was saving her too, even if she couldn't say it aloud. The morning briefing began crisp, formal, but something was different. Cadre stood stiff, radios clipped high on shoulders, attention under the surface like storm air, charged, waiting. Cole paced slowly, voice level but sharpened. Today is your final integrated exercise. 72 hours. No schedule, no predictability, decisions under fatigue, intelligence uncertainty. You will eat when you can, sleep when you earn it. He let silence rest a beat, long enough for stomachs to tighten. You will be evaluated on discipline, ethics, stamina, clarity under confusion, and team coherence. Then a pause. And there will be injects. No one asked what he meant. Training injects meant chaos, surprise, complications that turned plans into illusions. Prepare gear, move in 30. No joking, no locker room chatter, even the wind felt more serious. Anna checked her ruck with calm hands. Water, MREs, comms, NVGs, compass. Knife, the same one she sharpened nights alone, weight familiar, grounding. Price approached, hooking buckles on his plate carrier. You think they're going to make it rough? She looked at him, assessing not the question, but the intent behind it. They don't design comfort here. He laughed, small, nervous, but not like before. Guess we chose the wrong branch if we wanted comfort. You chose right, she replied softly. His face steadied at that, like the compliment wasn't praise, but permission to believe in himself. The first 6 hours ran smooth, almost deceptively so. Navigation drills, stealth movements, recon tasks, radio check-ins, a staged local informant interview where a role player tested moral boundaries under stress. No mistakes, no panic. And that's what bothered Anna. Peace in training is like calm water, beautiful, but rarely natural. Something always moves beneath the surface. By nightfall, the group settled into a tree line overlooking a valley. Moonlight silvered the terrain. Coyotes called somewhere distant. The forest breathed in slow, cool drafts, and for a moment it felt like peace might hold. Tanaka checked perimeter. Price reviewed notes. The corporal massaged his wrist from rope wear. Everything quiet. Too quiet. She sat on a stump, helmet off, wiping dust from her gloves. The stars above were bright, cold little truths looking down at humans, pretending they controlled fate. Then a radio crackled. Exercise inject, civilian distress call, 2 hikers injured at coordinates marked, unknown threat presence, units respond. Anna felt her chest tighten. Not because of the scenario, but because it echoed something real, too real. Price looked confused. Rescue, during SOF selection field phase. Tanaka frowned. Could be a moral curveball again. But Anna's skin prickled with something older than suspicion. Memory. Instinct. The muscle memory of a mission where the difference between civilian crisis and trap cost lives. Cole appeared at the ridge suddenly, like he'd been watching from shadows. "This is LiveX decision-making," he said. "Real world doesn't wait for your mission to finish before handing you another one." He looked directly at Anna when he said it. Not as challenge, as warning. Then he vanished back into the dark. They moved fast, pack light, only essentials. This wasn't combat, it was rescue under unknown variables. The forest swallowed sound. Night vision flickered green grain across terrain. Branches cracked softly under boots. Halfway there, Price whispered, "Feels off." "Everything real feels off," Anna murmured. "Certainty is a luxury of training." He swallowed at that, truth cutting cleaner than instruction. When they reached coordinates, they found them 2 hikers on ground, role players acting terrified. One leg splinted badly, one shaking like shock. Details felt rehearsed, but something else clung to the air. A wrongness. Anna felt it in her bones, the same way she'd felt it years ago walking into a village that smiled too widely under occupied fear. She crouched near the actors. "Movement in area?" she asked quietly. They shook heads, "Too fast, too perfect." Tanaka leaned close. "You picking up something?" She didn't nod, didn't speak, just breath slow. "Scan perimeter," she whispered. Price rotated, eyes cutting through brush. Then rustle. Not staged. Staged rustle was predictable, stiff. This one was human breath trying not to sound like one. Anna lifted a hand, stop signal. Someone out there. Real or simulated threat, didn't matter yet. She whispered, nonverbal, defensive posture, no light. Her team shifted, calm but ready. No panic, not like day one. Then a voice shattered the quiet from the trees, harsh, shaken, unfamiliar. "Don't move." Shadows, artillery jacket, civilian outline holding something, not a rifle, a shotgun, real or prop, hard to tell in NVG wash. The corporal's breath caught. Price froze, not in fear this time, but calculation. Anna's voice stayed soft, controlled, a lullaby against adrenaline. "We're military responders. Lower your weapon." "No," the figure cried. "They're lying, they were chasing me, they're not hikers." Actors shifted in fear, too convincingly now. The line between training and reality blurred until it felt like thin glass between 2 storms. Tanaka whispered, "Is this part of the exercise?" She didn't answer, because she didn't know, and not knowing was the real test here. Her heart beat steady, not calm, controlled, focused. "Put the gun down," she repeated. "Nobody needs to get hurt." He shook violently, finger near trigger. I don't trust you." Price hissed under breath, barely audible. "Ma'am, we cannot fire, we can't escalate." "I know," she murmured. Guns still aimed. They were seconds from disaster. Even in training, paint rounds at this distance could blind. A real shotgun, deadly. Anna slowly raised empty hands. Listen to me, you're scared, that's okay. Fear doesn't make you weak, acting without thinking does. His breath hitched, her voice didn't waver. You are not alone out here, we're here to help, let us help. For one terrifying second, silence pressed heavy like a foot on a trigger. Then he lowered the barrel. Just an inch, but enough. Anna moved fast, not aggressive, controlled. Closed distance, secured the shotgun in one fluid motion. The figure broke, sobbing in relief. The hikers dropped their act, laughing awkwardly. Price exhaled, shaking breath. Tanaka closed eyes in gratitude. The corporal sat down like gravity suddenly doubled. Anna didn't speak. She wasn't proud. Relief wasn't triumph, it was permission to feel again after bracing for tragedy. A crackle on radio. Inject complete. Team Bravo, top marks on de-escalation. Price looked at her, voice thin. You've done that before, haven't you? She didn't answer. Some truths don't need oxygen. They already breathe inside you. Hours later, at a temporary rest point, Anna sat alone again. The world asleep except crickets and wind and breath slowing after tension. Moonlight brushed pine branches silver. Tanaka approached and crouched. You knew what to do before anyone processed fear. She didn't lift her eyes. It wasn't experience, she said quietly. It was memory. He didn't pretend to understand. He respected the boundary. Price approached next, nervous, like a confession trembled in him. When you spoke to him, I saw something in your eyes, like you weren't here. You were somewhere else, somewhere worse. She finally looked up. Innocent people are most at risk when everyone thinks danger looks obvious. He nodded slowly, absorbing rather than answering. Ma'am, he whispered, do you ever stop seeing the places you've been? She breathed in, out soft, steady. No. He swallowed. Does it get easier? Her eyes softened only slightly. You don't need it to get easier, she murmured. You just need to stay human while carrying it. He blinked fast, holding emotion in a soldier's way. Thank you, he said. For today. For not breaking. For teaching us how not to. She didn't respond with words. Sometimes silence is how respect returns a salute. As dawn climbed up the edge of the world, she felt it, that familiar pull inside her. The one that whispered she might be strong enough to stay, strong enough to keep teaching, strong enough to continue living this second life, the life after war, where battles were quieter but stakes still cut deep. In the stillness, she understood something she hadn't before. She wasn't here to prove she could still fight. She was here to learn how to stop fighting herself. And dignity. It didn't roar. It breathed beside broken men, learning how to rise again. It stood quiet at tree lines after false gun barrels lowered. It lived in the choice to speak calm when chaos begged for panic. Strength wasn't force. Strength was presence. And sometimes the bravest thing a warrior could do was not pull a trigger, but remain human. Why is it that the final test never looks like a battlefield, but feels like one inside your chest? The last dawn of the field phase did not arrive with fanfare. It came quietly, a gentle gray smudge across the horizon, like the world itself whispered instead of waking. Fog lay close to the ground, hugging boots. Breath turned to mist. Silence wasn't peaceful, it was waiting. Candidates huddled around their gear, exhausted but wired with a strange mix of hope and dread. Faces hollowed from lack of sleep, eyes sharper than when they first arrived. Bodies bruised, scraped, sore, but standing. Standing mattered. Standing meant something. Anna sat apart from them on an old log, tightening straps, checking her weapon light, adjusting the radio on her plate carrier. Every movement smooth. She didn't look like someone finishing a course, she looked like someone beginning again. Tanaka stretched his neck, trying to crack stiffness out of it. Price paced in short lines, whispering focused drills under his breath. The corporal, once insecure, prideful, now sat quiet, hands clasped, absorbing stillness instead of filling it. Cole approached from the tree line, flanked by instructors. His face was unreadable stone. His voice carried across the clearing like gravel rolled slow. You're in the final block. Not celebration, not relief. Reality. You will conduct one last mission simulation. Intelligence collection, threat prevention, no direct engagement unless you have no choice. The words "no choice" hung in the air like a premonition. Cole's eyes roamed over each face, lingering longest on hers. She didn't flinch. This is not designed for victory, he continued. It is designed for truth. Truth, the most dangerous battlefield of all. Move out. They hiked a mile through thick brush, dew-soaking pants, boots scraping rock. Birds stirred overhead. Distant gunfire popped from some other training lane on the base, echoing faintly. They reached a ridge. Below, a mock village, plywood walls, staged vehicles, smoke canisters burning in oil barrels, actors milling. A training hub pretending to be somewhere far uglier, far hotter, far bloodier. It didn't matter that it was staged. Their hearts reacted as though it was real. Price peered through binos. Looks like a safe house scenario. Multiple entry points, Tanaka whispered. Crowd presence. Anna's eyes narrowed slightly. Watch for unknowns. Nothing obvious is ever the problem. They moved low. Ghosts. Communication brief, hand signals crisp. It didn't feel like training anymore. They had crossed a line days ago. Now they were something closer to operators in embryo. At the perimeter, they split into pairs. Tanaka and Price circled left. The corporal flanked right with a candidate who once mocked him, no mockery now. Stress had equalized them all. Anna advanced center path, not leading, not hiding, where she could see everything and intervene when she must, without stealing their agency. She scanned windows, roofline, alleys, silence in her blood, a hum like memory. A woman actor walked by carrying fake groceries. 2 children played near a tire swing. A man sat smoking, expression unreadable. So many times she had entered real places like this. So many faces she wondered about long after extraction. Innocence in war zones was never obvious, never loud. Innocence blended in, tried to survive quietly, much like dignity itself. A sound snapped her attention, low argument inside a building. Muffled voices, one sharper than the other. Urgency, fear. Tanaka whispered through comms, audio at structure 2, we can't see inside. Price added, I have visual movement in back alley, 3 figures. Hold positions, Anna said, soft, calm, the kind of calm that only comes after learning fear cannot dictate action. She crouched behind a barrel, watching. A door opened. A woman stumbled out, actor but performance too convincing to ignore. She clutched her arm, crying out. Behind her, a figure in camo mask appeared, brandishing a prop weapon that looked dangerously real. Price whispered, voice tight, threat. Stand by, she responded. Not every weapon demands a bullet. Some demand patience. Some demand wisdom. Some demand courage beyond force. The masked figure yelled something unintelligible and dragged the woman back inside. Tanaka cursed under breath. The corporal's voice trembled in comms. We have to. Not yet, Anna whispered. Emotion wasn't strategy. Impulse was not instinct, and real missions didn't offer do-overs. Minutes stretched, sweat crawled down necks, breathing shallow. Then another disturbance. A second figure sprinted across the door gap inside, child actor voice crying. A trap, a test, or empathy training disguised as chaos. Didn't matter. The heart didn't differentiate between simulation and memory. Ma'am, Price whispered, voice raw, tell me what to do. She inhaled, exhaled. The past flickered, another doorway, Another cry, another moment where she had chosen action and later begged the quiet at night to forgive her choices. "You think I have your answers," she murmured. "No, I only have my mistakes." Silence, then steady. "We move, controlled. Communication only. No shot unless hostile intent confirmed." Their grips tightened, their breaths steadied. Leadership didn't always roar orders, sometimes it whispered clarity. They stacked on the door. The corporal trembled once, then stilled. Price exhaled slow through nose, grounding. Tanaka checked corners, measured, deliberate. Anna counted down with her fingers. 3, 2, 1. Breach. Flash simulation popped. Shouts. Controlled chaos. A child actor ran toward them. The corporal caught him gently, shielding. A masked actor lunged from a corner, weapon raised. Price leveled his rifle, didn't fire, shoved the weapon aside and tackled instead. A second masked figure emerged behind. Anna moved like instinct trained over years, weapon low, body between threat and teammate. "Drop it," she commanded. The actor hesitated just long enough, training aggression, not real malice. Gun lowered, exercise safety cut. And then silence. Breathing, heartbeats, dust particles floating in shafts of light. Someone upstairs shouted, "Exercise complete." Not triumph, release. Tanaka leaned against wall, panting. The corporal wiped tears he didn't understand. Price sat on floor, helmet off, staring at his hands, not in fear this time, but in awe. "We did it," he whispered. "We didn't break." Anna didn't smile. She allowed warmth to flicker behind her ribs, but didn't let it show fully. Pride wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. She simply said, "You learned." Sometimes that was the only victory worth anything. Hours later, back at base, chairs arranged in loose rows. Cadre at front. Candidates sat straight, clothes still dirty, eyes heavier than rucksacks. Cole stepped forward. "Most classes lose 70% by now," he said. "You lost far fewer." He paused. "Because you did not try to impress. You tried to grow." Eyes moved toward Anna without turning heads. No one said her name. They didn't need to. Cole nodded once toward the group, and then toward her. Respect not spoken but understood. "You earned this moment," he said. "Not through perfection, but through humility, resilience, and restraint under pressure." He surveyed them. "The world doesn't need more warriors who want to prove they're powerful." He looked at Anna again, voice softening. "It needs warriors who protect without needing to be seen." Silence fell, heavy, sacred. Then came the unexpected. A 4-star general entered the hall, same one who had intervened when Anna was struck days before. Everyone stood instantly, back straight, breath caught. The general scanned the room, then spoke, voice calm but full. "Great soldiers are not defined by how loud they stand above others," he said. "They are defined by how quietly they lift others beside them." He turned toward Anna, not to praise, but to acknowledge, which meant far more. "You reminded them," he said, "that strength is never cruelty and dignity never needs a stage." Her eyes didn't move. She simply absorbed the moment, not as triumph but closure. A door inside her, long jammed by memory and grief, clicked open just a little, enough to breathe differently, enough to believe in tomorrow. Outside, after dismissal, the candidates approached her one by one, not to thank, to honor. Price stepped last. His voice was steady, older now somehow. "You taught me how to fight without losing myself," he said. "I won't forget." She met his eyes, saw in him the future leader she once hoped she had been for someone long ago. "You did that," she replied. "I only stood beside you while you remembered you could." His eyes shined. "Will we see you again?" She hesitated. A month ago, she would have said no. She'd planned to pass through this course like a ghost, train them, leave, disappear into whatever quiet life existed for soldiers who could no longer fight but didn't know how to rest. Now, Maybe, she said softly, if I stay human enough to deserve this place. He blinked, understanding the weight beneath those words. They saluted, not rigid, reverent, goodbye not as farewell but as respect. Later, alone once more at the tree line as dusk returned, she breathed in the pine air, the quiet, the ache of tired muscles that felt earned instead of endured. War had shaped her. Training had steadied her. But this had saved something inside her she thought was lost, the part still capable of belief. Belief in others. Belief in purpose. Belief in herself. She wasn't healed. Healing wasn't a finish line, it was a direction. But she was walking again. And sometimes that was enough. Sometimes dignity did not speak. It simply acted. It trained quietly. It steadied others. It let growth be louder than ego. It chose restraint over rage. It held humanity sacred when fear begged for violence. And in the spaces where war had once hollowed her, something had begun to bloom again. Not triumph. Not pride. Hope. Silent, strong, earned. Because true strength had never been the ability to strike harder. It was the courage to stand still and rise again anyway. Sometimes the bravest warriors are not the ones who fire first. They are the ones who choose not to. And in that silence, humanity survives. And dignity. It doesn't roar. It endures.